Hey, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Quarbit, and let's talk about some of the least formed nations in EU4. These are nations which can be formed but are often pushed aside by players because they either have no achievements attached, take way too long to form, or have worse ideas and missions than their viable starting nations. This list is in no particular order, by the way, and if you've formed a nation or two on this list, then that's great. Please don't take it as a personal attack. I'm including these nations based off of non-multiplayer and non-role-playing reasons. Finally, we'll be excluding colonial formables and reformable nations since they would take up most of the video. Especially now that they've added a ton of colonial formables, it's just not viable to add them all in. And with that out of the way, let's get started. As our westmost formable on today's list, we'll be starting from Iceland. I had a bit of an internal struggle about putting Iceland on this list, since they're used for challenging world conquests and general memes or challenge runs. However, Iceland has no achievements attached, and most people never give thought to playing Iceland, since their development situation is as bad as it gets. Becoming Iceland is simple through two different methods. You could either form it manually as Norway by losing some wars and giving up land, or you can release them as a vassal. We'll be focusing on the formable decision today because that's the least picked form. To form Iceland, you have to have only 4 provinces while owning Iceland, and it's a little bit tougher than one would imagine. As Norway, you'll have to give up every Scandinavian core you own, with only Iceland and the 2 Atlantic island provinces left. Of course, you could do this through multiple other methods, such as playing in the British Isles, conquering Iceland, and then removing all of your provinces in the Isles. But generally speaking, the Norway strategy is probably the first one you'll end up doing. If you choose to take up the Icelandic mantle, at least you'll be rewarded with some pretty powerful ideas. The introduction of 1.30 gave Iceland some pretty spicy ideas, including 5% discipline, a free colonist, missionary strength, 15% light ship combat ability, and an impressive 20% culture conversion cost decrease. Moving towards Eastern Europe, we have Kurland. Available from the 1561 start date, Kurland is often overlooked because it can only be formed by Riga or the Livonian Order. And on top of that, forming Kurland also requires you to go Protestant or Reformed, disabling the Baltic Crusader achievement. Your rewards for looking past all of that is the Curonian idea set, which, to be completely honest with you, is either on par or worse than Divine Ideas. Changing idea sets also has you lose a missionary strength, manpower recovery speed, and core cost reduction among other small bonuses, while the useful bonuses you get from Curonian ideas are -1 national unrest, production efficiency, naval force limit, and some cavalry combat. Next on our list, staying in Eastern Europe, is Ruthenia. To form Ruthenia, all you need to do is own Kiev, Zaporizhia, Haliç, and Volhynia, while being Belarusian or Ruthenian culture. By all means, Ruthenia is actually a really solid nation. Their idea set is above average, with manpower buffs, +2 tolerance of heretics, cavalry combat ability, -5 years of separatism, +1 tolerance of the true faith, and 5% discipline, to name some of the better ones. And Russian Principality missions grant a lot of permanent claims and bonuses. However, Ruthenia is so underformed because, to do so, you'd have to culture shift. For most formables, this isn't a problem, but the most likely candidates to form Ruthenia are going to be Lithuania and Poland, which in their own right are actually stronger than Ruthenia either through ideas, missions, or both. Ruthenia also has no specific achievements, so even achievement hunters don't have a reason to go out of their way to form it. Next up, we have Dalmatia, which is much easier to simply release and play. If you want to form Dalmatia, you'll have to own less than 11 provinces, you can't be Croatia, and you have to own Split and Zadar. and when formed, you don't even get access to Croatian missions. For some reason you do when released, but not when formed. On the bright side, Dalmatia does have some of the best ideas in the game, including 15% core cost reduction, 15% infantry combat ability, 10% morale of armies, 15% trade efficiency, -1 national unrest, 15% reform growth, and +2 max cultures, among some other bonuses. Having Dalmatia for their ideas while forming a separate nation with good missions would actually make for a really great run. Unfortunately for their strict forming requirements, lack of missions, and 0 specific achievements, Dalmatia is an unlikely formation candidate. Moving eastward past Anatolia, we have the formable nation of Armenia. Much like Dalmatia, you're much better off simply releasing them and playing from there. But if you're ready for a bad time, then you don't need to look any further. If you thought Dalmatia was a poor choice to form, well, get ready for Armenia's grueling run. Your one nation of choice from 1444 is Karabakh, a vassal of Karakoyunlu. And if that wasn't fun enough for you, looking at the decision requirements shows us that you also have to core Adana. So, if you're not fast enough, you'll also be dancing around the Ottomans or Mamluks just to even get started. And if you somehow survive and totally not through the power of the consul, core Adana, you're rewarded with 11 permanent claims, the generic mission tree, and a pretty okay set of ideas. They're not great by any means, especially not for fighting, but at least you can turn your mountainous terrain into a semi-developed fortress. Moving to the Persia region, we have the Ilkhanate. The Ilkhanate is released frequently by Mongol Empire players as a march, but did you know it's actually formable as well? It has some niche forming requirements, such as being one of the steppe horde cultures outside of the Persia region which you have to own. You also can't be ruled by the Timurid dynasty, and you have to move your capital to Persia. For all of your efforts, you get access to a really good set of ideas, including large bonuses to cavalry, unrest, and tech cost reduction. Unfortunately, there are no new mission sets open to you, and there are no specific achievements to gain by forming the Ilkhanate. If you want to, though, you can still form the Mongol Empire. North of the Himalayas and occupying the plateau is our next entry, Tibet. The successor states of the old empire have access to a unique mission tree, giving explorative players a reason to visit the region. To reform the Tibetan Empire is simple, only requiring you to own the provinces of Lhasa, Garzi, and Tachienlu while being Tibetan and Vajrayana. From my experience, it's most fun to do this as the nation of U for maximum mean potential. Upon completion, your mission tree is kept, and owning some of that land needed for forming Tibet gets you closer to those crazy permanent claims later on. When it comes to your new set of ideas, they're nothing to scoff at either. While modest, Tibetan ideas provide a wide set of small but useful bonuses, such as national unrest, tolerance of heathens and heretics, idea cost, and advisor cost to name a few. The 5% discipline, of course, is one of the best it has to offer. I feel Tibet is one of the criminally underformed nations out there. Sure, it has a somewhat difficult path forward, but their mission tree and ideas have some amazing potential. Let's move further southeast to where we find the obscure formable nation of Shan. Available in multiple start dates from 15.2 onwards, I have not once seen the AI nor a player form the nation of Shan. I'd never even heard of Shan before doing my research for today's video. For one, there are 0 achievements related to the region, and the ideas are only okay at best, not to mention being one of the least popular religion picks as well. To form it, you need only be of Shan culture and own the provinces in orange here. It's not even particularly hard to form, it's just that no one wants to because it's so out of the way. If for some reason you really want to form this obscure nation, you get some pretty decent permanent claims, and some okay ideas including national unrest decrease, production efficiency, an extra promoted culture, and some manpower benefits. For these last two nations, we'll be moving all the way back to Africa. Starting in the north of the continent, we have the formidable nation of Algiers. Algiers is also releasable, as it is the primary nation for Algerian culture lands and exists in 1517 and onwards. Algiers would almost always be formed by the AI if it weren't for the very specific requirements blocking most North African nations from being able to do so. This means you're restricted to very few nations in 1444 if you're willing to take on the challenge. Forming Algiers grants you some pretty good permaclaims for the early game, but your mission tree is still generic, and even worse, you're stuck with the old Berber ideas from pre-Golden Century. Before our last nation, I'd like to give an honorable mention to the formidable nation of Greece, which most players wouldn't touch if it didn't stack up well with academical or had its own specific achievement, as well as Bukhara, which can only be formed by Uzbek. Although this list is unstructured, I still decided to leave the best for last. Finally, what I consider to be the absolutely least formed nation in the game. Traveling to West Africa, we are introduced to Sokoto. The formation requirements seem rather tame at first, just a single province and 50 legalism, nothing really too difficult, except for just one thing. It's one of the few, if not the only formable nation, which requires an event to occur before the decision is unlocked. Usman Danfodio is the event in question, which has a mean time to happen of around 150 months, and can only fire after 1770. If you also have minus 30 piety. Considering most playthroughs don't even go that far in the first place, you can only guess how many times Sokoto has been formed in total. If I were to place an estimate, I'd say less than 1,000 times, potentially less than 500. Considering the lower popularity of playing in Africa, the only slightly above average ideas, and quit rate of most campaigns, Sokoto is truly one of the least formed nations in EU4. Hey there, thanks for watching. I know I usually don't make videos like these, but I just felt the need to make something fun for once in a while. In other news, I'll probably return to the 11 tips series for number 3. I know a lot of you have been waiting a really long time for the next one, and I feel like it's finally time for it. If you liked today's video, then dropping a like or comment helps spread it around, so that would be really appreciated. I'll probably make some more of these types of videos if this one does really well, and subscribing helps to show me that you want to see more. And just as well, you might as well click that bell icon to make sure you don't miss the next one. Links to social media and Patreon are down below if you want to check those out, and this is Quarbit signing off. As always, have a fantastic day. I'd like to give a quick shout out for the patrons for the month of July, especially those we have in the Admiral tier, Ben Greenhagen, Cara Newley, and Tiger Pop, those in the General tier, Justinian, Brennan Arkano, and Alexander Baker, those in the Prince tier, Natsuki, Rockbox 2020, and TFLJ Martis, and as always in the King tier we have Chewy Shoot. Thank you guys so much for your pledges, it means a lot to me, you're helping to move this channel forward much more than you know, and as always, I cannot possibly thank you enough.